the line now, so I think we'll begin. So hi everyone, and thank you for joining us for the second session in the Recondition Nation Learning Event series. This series is designed to share some of the really exciting innovations happening across the country. My name is Lucy Barnett, I'm an Improvement Manager with eSyst, and I'll be hosting today's session. We've got two really great speakers lined up for you today. Firstly, Dr. Bharath Lakkappa is going to be speaking to us about balancing risk and decision-making in frailty, followed by colleagues from North Middlesex who will be giving a presentation on their work to support reconditioning in their own patients. Just before we start, some housekeeping. This session is being recorded and will be published on our YouTube channel. There'll be an opportunity to ask questions after each speaker. If you'd rather, please feel free to post your questions in the chat box, and Nick will be keeping an eye on these, and we'll pick these up at the end of each session. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Bharath. Bharath's not only a consultant geriatrician, but also Deputy Medical Director for Northampton Healthcare Trust and a clinical associate with eSyst. So over to you, Bharath.
Thanks, Lucy. I'm following up from Amit Arora, so I'm kind of doing my best. So it's kind of hard to be behind somebody like Amit. So I'm going to share. There'll be a pause in between, and then we'll do a small activity just to give us a flavor, and then go through there. I'm mainly talking about frailty related to why the games is really important and how do you make decision making as well in frailty patients, which is complex, but how do we simplify it and things you need to know. Good luck with the sharing.
Bharath, if you need any help, just give me a shout.
It's just loading up, so hopefully it'll be there. Everybody okay with that one?
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you, that's great. Thanks for bearing with me. And sometimes Teams has a mind of its own, so big title there, but we're just going to start with looking at the population we deal with. We're looking at a few things. We don't look at patients in the left spectrum, which is independent. Majority of our healthcare delivery is focused on the very last element, the dependent population. Even though they got multiple medical problems, people are independent, living a life, and also we rarely see them. So the bit which we will be talking about is mainly at the other end of the heterogeneity spectrum, which is the dependent patients and also frail. Some of them might be in end of life, but we don't know until we ask ourselves some questions, whether is that what they are, and are we going to help them to get the best out of the few hundred days or 1,000 days they have with them. Hopefully that's clear. Just the BGS, I mean, I'm at this part of that, so they did a presentation a while ago with the Royal College of Physicians. A few questions for yourself to answer. I'll give you around about 30 seconds. Hopefully everybody gets the answer. Yep, everybody guessed it right. It's 4, low energy, slow walking speed, and reduced strength. The bit which is untrue is it's not inevitable, and it's associated with long-term conditions, but can occur with the absence of them as well. It's amenable to treatment, and then compared to fragility, it's a bit different. So when you look at the things, when we talk to a patient, when we see a patient, when they're coming in, the questions we need to ask ourselves is, most of the time we get a history from these patients. What do they do? What we're looking for, especially in patients who are of a certain age, about 65, 75, is the characteristics of frailty. I mean, they got sarcopenia or unintentional weight loss in the last 6 months. The next questions when you ask them in a history is you're going to get the weakness, this poor endurance or exhaustion for doing daily tasks. They're much more slow than before and low activity. The thing which is interesting for us is it's kind of a functional decline cycle. Less muscle mass, sensation of increased effort, you do less activity, and then you lower your muscle mass again, and it's sarcopenia. It's a self-perpetuating cycle. The bit we see in healthcare is the element of the outcomes of what contributes to the pathway of frailty. We're looking at biological mechanisms, a lot of immunological and physiological processes, and then disease. Leads to the frailty characteristics, which we're going to be asking for history. And then we see the outcomes mainly related to these bits there. That's the falls, disability, dependency, and death. And most of the time we get involved in there. Unless we ask these questions for you to make a decision about whether this patient's in the right place, needing the right effort, we really can't tell because we didn't ask those questions ourselves. So just going to talk a little bit about what happens when you start getting old. So as you rightly said, this is a cardiac output. It declines with age. So that's around about 35 years of age or so. But also remember, most of the time we're going to be seeing patients in this age group. I don't want to go into statistics before because I think people, most of you know, 65 plus. They're only 30% of the patients coming into A&E, but nearly 60% get admitted. They're the ones staying longest in the hospital bed length of stays as well. So you're looking at patients over here. The bit about cardiac output as well as important factors contributing for the frailty elements as well as there might be on multiple medications. And when you look at 80 plus, postural hypertension prevalence is nearly 66%. That means if somebody has a falls about 65, 1/3 of them will have postural hypertension. Just remind yourself of this as I keep going through so that it helps you out. So they got little, we got to be jealous of Matthew Pinsent and Sir Stephen Redgrave. They were 18, 5 Olympics, and they still managed, and they were supposed to be here physically, according to their physiology, but they were winning gold medals 20 years into their reign. So I think it is possible with activity, but just for you to realize the same again with lung capacity as well. Similarly, it declines with age, along with functional aspects. The bit which we mostly come along and quite repeated admissions of what we see in the hospitals are people who smoke. If you look at the severe disability of the person and then clinical symptoms developing, you get most of us live in that line, and then you get the smokers. A really susceptible smoker, you might start seeing them in the early 40s and 50s, and those are the patients you see them in and out again. So for these patients you see early, you know there's a predictability thing. This is where your prophylactic measures or your immunizations and things like that need to come into place. The slideshow is working, hopefully. And you get somebody who stops smoking and they still can get into susceptibility, but then they are the ones who might be lucky enough not to see us. And then in the late 80s and 90s, you might be seeing them. And the one who is somewhat susceptible, you can see them. But if you stop smoking, you might still see them there as well. So you got a spectrum of people with self-imposed causing harm to themselves. They still can't function. We get jealous of the 85-year-old Cuban cigar smoking granddad or somebody in the mountain, but physiologically it's still possible. That means if they're not mobilizing much, they sit in a chair, they can smoke, that's fine. So when we look at oddity of nature, it's explained in the physiology as well. The other bit which we need to also consider when you're making decisions is the temperature regulation of these patients. They have a lower baseline temperature because they can't regulate. That means they will have some blunting. When by the time somebody gets fever, especially in the frail older patients, it might be too late. That means the physiological mechanisms doesn't allow them. They don't sweat, so they can't really regulate their body temperature. So the bit I've been talking about right now is mainly related to the NEWS2 scoring mechanism. Even with the heart rate, which is when you look at the maximum heart rate, it's 220 minus the age, and most of the patients 80, 75, you're looking at maximum heart rate of 130, 140. That means after that, if they continue to be with the heart rates of 130, 140, that means they will be having cardiac events, heart attacks, or cardiac arrest. So we're looking at physiologically, these patients are quite dependent. So how is that seen when you look at a patient? We look at the functional abilities, independence and dependence. If non-frail patient, there's a small illness or big illness. I had the flu. I was bedbound for 3 days. I came back up. But you're looking at somebody who's frail. There's a big dip. I mean, this dip is, if you're lucky enough that we can keep them at home or see them in A&E and bring them out, that's great. If not, you can see the dip, and then we propagate the dip as well by majority of the activity in the hospital is either sitting down or lying down. We know most of the studies say that nearly 97% of the time spent in hospital, acute hospitals, is either non-mobile. Out of them, 93% horizontal and 5% So you're looking at them coming back up to normal. Nearly 1/3, 2/3 won't be going back independent. Only 1/3 might be, and then other ones might be going up with some help. This one, I use this study quite a bit because it was a simple study done where they asked 10 healthy elders to lie in complete bed rest for 10 days. They also made sure nothing happened to them as well. What they checked after that was very simple measures. What they did was they measured their maximal aerobic capacity. They had greater than 10% loss. In some places, that's been quoted as to equivalent to a decade of life. You can take it anyway. Most of the time, the maximum aerobic capacity loss, it takes 10 to 12%, takes around about 10 years of your life. But they also checked for measures which included lower extremity strength and just checked if their knee strength and state climbing strength was okay. What they found was there was quite a bit of decreased, and it is statistically significant as well. What does that mean? These people are healthy elders, 65 plus, completely independent in the community, and then you can see quite a bit of difference. Now add that into the patients with sarcopenia, the characteristics of frailty, they're slow, they're weak, and they're not able to mobilize. And then we put them into 97% of the time not being mobile in an acute hospital. The consequences can be quite severe for them. I will give it a try. Let's see if this works. Just give me 1 second. Apologies for this one. Let me see how I can. Can people hear me? Okay. So this is a normal sitting position where your heels are, the toes are behind your knees, and you can stand up. So you can turn around and give it a try on your chairs and see if you can stand up straight. Just turn the chairs around. Just make sure your toes are just behind your knees and flat, and then try to get up there. See how that feels. Okay, that's good enough. Somebody is sarcopenic, weak. What we're going to do now is just keep your knees in line with your heels. Just keep it straight like that. And try to stand up from the chair now. See a little bit of wobbles going on. But the next bit is, how do you explain to somebody how is there's going to be loss of activity, muscle loss, and decreased function? Is just push your heels in front of your knees. So your heels is in front of your knees. Everybody got that? Now try to get up of the chair, same way.
Bharath, are you still there? We might have lost you.
Thanks for bearing with me. I just needed to. I mean, I should have gone with Philippa's excuse for trying YouTube on, but I thought this was much easier. I read the Google how to do it, and I thought, nah, I've given up. So hopefully that gives you just a flavor. And it's quite difficult for a patient who's in the chair, lying down or sitting down, not doing anything, and then finding them to do it. It takes a lot of effort to do that. I'm just going to share my slides again, and then we get going. Sorry. This bit, which These studies came out in 1996 when I started training. So this was a really interesting study when I was a partly orthopedic surgeon, partly trying to get retired from medicine, and then chose medicine and get back into pediatric medicine. The decline in function and hospitalization is common, it says, and nearly 50% of them will need help with their independence and specific ADL. So it's not a new study. It's been there for a while. The bit again, which people forget, is a hospital a safe place? Okay, let me just talk about how do they eat protein, calorie malnutrition among older persons. The prevalence is around about 10% in the community. It's nearly 50 to 60% in a hospital. And then if you go to a long-term care condition, nursing home, or residential home, you start looking at nearly 85% of them are malnourished. If protein allergy malnutrition, you don't eat well, then the severity of disease increases, your functional status decreases, and then they keep going through with the process of, okay, they're getting tired, they're not able to eat, and then the cycle perpetuates. So, okay, we're talking about frailty. What's the point? The point is very simple. We just need to make sure that the outcomes for them are better, and then also we avoid unnecessary harm for these patients if we can identify frailty. The biggest difficulty these patients face is they have small stresses. UTIs might be, they stumbled upon something, they didn't see the cat, or they had postural hypertension. The outcomes are pretty nasty for them. That means even though it's a minor stressor for most of the patients, when you add that onto a frail patient, it gets worse. Some ways to recognize it is most probably, hopefully, if you all have got electronic medical records, which the digital NHS say so, we will be able to get the timed up and go test. Locally, we are making sure that we use something called the Ardence template, frailty template. So when we see a patient, and if somebody's seen them before us, then the recognition of frailty is already there. Supposing it's a physio or a nurse or myself, we put the timed up and go test in there. The sensitivity and specificity is superior with these three tests, mainly the walking speed and Prisma 7 questionnaire. The other bits which is available also is the e-frailty score. It depends on the number of deficits to the total number of deficits. So when you look at that 0 or 50, you can quantify that into fit, mildly frail, moderately frail, severely frail. Why is that important? You can actually look at the resources you use out in the community, but also if it's visible to people coming in. The difficulty for these patients is that the ones who are fit, we're looking at around about 3 years of their life, 5 years. They being on this planet, nearly 75 to 80% won't be there in 3 to 5 years' time. That means you know the degree of difficulty of these patients. We see them quite often, but also we don't recognize it in the way that what's important for them is that, yes, their chances on their hospital stay gets worse if we don't recognize the frailty element before they come in. But we are lucky that this came out. The predictive validity is similar to the frailty index. We score them according to the numbers, but not only doing this, we're looking at somebody's activity 2 weeks before the admission. So we just said the frailty index lets us see how long they're going to survive or what's the degree of difficulty for their health issues. And then when you look at the frailty score, it's very similar as well. We're good at using scores, but what we also look at is unless somebody says the mortality or the length of stay, people don't really agree to things there. So when you look at frailty scores of 3, 4, 5, and 6, they're very similar. What we're saying is that the mortality is slightly higher. You're looking at mortality. I'll show another score which we commonly use, but the length of stay also keeps going up if we don't identify them and then put things into place as quickly as we can. The bit which we all use is curve 65. I mean, we use that in the community all the time. So right now, we got lucky that we tried to do a pilot, and we were struggling with the community-acquired pneumonia in frail elderly, especially in dementia patients, whether it's delirium related to something else. So we just won an HSG award where we started doing near-patient testing. Well, we just kept it simple. We started reviewing patients, did the CRP, so we know that it's an infection. We take the bloods, and if the urea is increased, then we might send them in because the curve score is 65 plus is 2 plus. 85, 65 is 1. And then if they don't have confusion, we can keep them at home. So we do know that's related to mortality. If the score of 2 plus, you're looking at mortality about 9%. Similarly, the clinical frailty scale as well does the similar kind of calculation for us, and we know that 4, 5, and 6 are very close in nature with the mortality prediction, length of stay, and also the readmission rates also it's quite high in there. We do know quite a few things, the patient's age, a little bit of history, and then we know that they're frail. I mean, we don't need much more to make decisions for ourselves, but it's really hard in acute settings because not everything is straightforward. There's lots of things coming at you from family members, the whole works. And then it could be illness related, it could be over medication. It's quite a complicated process. And hopefully nobody's using the acopia at home, because I had to put that in because it was a common feature in some of the history, in the assessment and plans and some of the patients. So again, hospital versus support at home with a responsive community service. Yes, we do need to identify them, but having the responsibility that's a political issue where that's the data collection, resource allocation, and then money allocation. That's a different matter. But early recognition of frailty syndrome should be helping us mainly to focus the support to return home or immediate initiation of rehabilitation wherever they are. We are used to playing it safe for patients, but looking at things, we're not in the corporate world. Decision making can be done, but we look for quick decisions is not there. The only safest way, everybody's seen this slide before. I'm sorry I had to put it up because I can't, it has to be in any frailty review or frailty presentation. There's language. I mean, Ben is a partner in crime of mine who we talk about, so we use each other's slides. You heard all this. I'm not happy for you to go home. He might fall. She's not safe. I'm not happy to sign him off the stairs. I'm not risking my pen. The relatives might complain. Lots more. Then these are my patients. I'm responsible. I might be sued. Might have to be called in front of the coroner. It's not my job, but I can't see them and I can see the patient in front of me. These are common themes we see. There's quite a few more strong ones. I thought I'll keep it good for lunchtime today, just to keep it slides. The bit which we need to be clear, this was a simple study in Scotland. It's an epidemiological study. They kept it so simple. It just shocked us. They looked at every patient discharged from an acute hospital in Scotland and then followed up with the death certificates in 12 months time, and they found nearly 48% of 85 plus were dead after their admission to the hospital within 12 months. So they are at a high risk of these patients. These are the patients who stay. If you look at 21 days or more in hospital, most of our patients are 85 plus. Again, when you look at the mortality risk compared to somebody in ED staying over, then you can see the mortality is much, much higher if they're admitted for about 10 days or more. I mean, majority of our 85 plus, I mean, if you look at national statistics coming out, it's 5 to 7 days for less than 75, and it's around about 10 to 14 days when you look at patients of 75 years of age. So, and then again, if you're 77 or more, and if you're in the population, the mean is that you're going to be around for 3 years or so. That's 1,000 days on this planet. I just had to put this quote in, and has to be from the Daily Mail because, let me come to that in a second. The falls risk, you have a fall at home yet? I mean, 65 plus is 30%, 40 plus is 80%, but the minute you hit a nursing home, it's 60%. So if you think nursing homes are safe, either they're not being moved around, or if patients are independent, then it's a bit unfair that they're not made mobile. Again, when you fall, falls in hospital increases by 50%. So if you admit a patient in acute hospital thinking the falls risk is you're going to keep them safe, no, it says the statistics is very stark. If you look at the fractures in the community, only 1% of them are hip fractures. But the minute you hit an hospital or inpatient setting, you start looking at hip fractures in the 50% ranges. There's one interesting thing, I had to blow it up because patients, the rate of falls is increased in recently hospitalized patients with risk factor for falls. So even not only did we make it unsafe for them if they don't need to come into hospital, but when you discharge them, also we increase the risks. So when we're having conversations, they're not going to be safe at home. One of the best things is just to give the patient a call, and then that can decrease the admissions. And that was done in the Daily Mail, so I had to put that in. So not many positive stories of about health in the Daily Mail. So it was simple thing. It's we've commissioned Age UK locally to give patients who are frail or gone home, who live alone, to have a phone call, and that decreased our readmission rate by nearly 36%. That wasn't just in the studies we did, and before we could increase the pallet, it was commissioned. So most of them will get a phone call from an Age UK person, volunteer, or it could be from a PCN primary care network nurse. So all the frail discharges will get a phone call to decrease their readmission rate as well. We behave differently with lots of things. So how do you empower patients is they do need to know the pros and cons. We just said not only do they have increased risk of falls, increased risk of hip fractures, increased risk of death if they've got in a crowded ED. So if I'm not speaking out of place, that's my daily life right now, patients coming in from a crowded ED as well. And we don't ask what matters to them versus what matters with them. We don't document things, which helps that. In elective care, it's quite simple. You get consent for surgery and you're given a choice. For surgery, we accept risk, we document it in the notes. I mean, why not in a similar case for a frail older patient or frail? This one, everybody's seen this before. The consent form is similar to the admission into hospital. When you look at the bottom, it says it all. Increased risk of infections, increased risk of falls, increased risk of confusion. You might never go home. You might be admitted to a residential home, or you might die. People never say that. But it's important for us to understand that before we start making decisions. I mean, the real risk that they're concerned about is mainly perceived by the clinician. It's nothing to do with the patient. It might be contributing, but it seems to be mainly related to the patient. And also, it can be attributed to them as well, but not to this extent where clinicians ourselves make the decision. I'll talk about just doctors because it starts early. Most medical schools have the Medical Defense Union, Medical Protection Society coming in and speaking to students, but nobody talks to them about embracing risk or looking at the physiological changes which happens and what do you see as a patient coming through. I mean, majority of the care they're going to be doing is going to be, you're going to be involved in it, be frail patients, because we've got lots of services which maintain patients out in the community. There's a risk in whatever we do. There is risk in all of the outcomes of our decisions. When we want autonomy for ourselves, but we want safety for our family. Risk averse for one person usually means you're increasing or removing the risk somewhere else. So risk usually belongs to the patient. The risk, it's a balance. So there's nothing, no risk or safe, it's just slightly safer or it's a low risk as long as you explain to them. This one is another board quote. It's an amazing quote. I don't think we can just let it lie. Ability, if you risk nothing, then the patient risks losing everything. The bit which we're seeing live in the system right now is every decision we make about a patient has a risk to them, but also a direct effect on others, the system as a whole. And then if you're looking at the delays with the harms and delays to the patient, it's related to some. There are lots of things to help you take some decisions. One of them, which is the brand tool, Ben talks about it really with passion, so we need to embrace that as well. The benefits, the risks, the alternatives, or if you do nothing. I mean, sometimes doing nothing as well can benefit for these patients. I mean, when you look at surgical procedures, oncological studies, and oncological treatment, we are asked to review patients at home because they can't go into clinics, and then we can take chemotherapy to their own home. So how do we know? When we ask the patient, when we do the brand with them, the decision sometimes is really simple. The patient just wants to be leading a simple life and wants to be happy with his family around him, which means that he doesn't want the treatment. As long as people accept it, that's quite good. COVID did that to us as well, because at the time of COVID, we had like a lot of frail patients are refusing to go into A&E because after looking at the TVs and news in Italy, we had like 3 patients in a row, more than 100 years of age, but did not want to go in. Their saturation in the low 80s, low 60s and 70s, but that somehow survived. We got lucky because they did not but they're not sent in. We didn't intubate them. There's lots of things which are related to it, but giving the patient a choice is also important. We do a lot of decisions and we use a lot of tools. The criteria to admit is based on used to. So for us, we do we review the news to on every visit, face-to-face visit of every patient in rapid response. So we have around today was 393 patients on our books. So every single visit gets a news to. We don't argue too much. If there is no variance agreed with the consultants, or if there's no palliative care, end-of-life care issues, or ceiling of care, do not resuscitate, do not transfer, we follow the rules. News of 3 in 1 plus 3 in 1, or more than 6 in the total. They need acute hospital treatment for sepsis. Again, the brand tool as well. Correct. Clinical early discharge, again, uses the news tool to help you with the decisions. We use the curve score quite all the time, especially with patients where there's a differentiation of infection. So the CRP is helping us out. Again, it is complex. Frailty, if it was simple, everybody would have got it right by now. Simple as baking a cake. Complicated, yes, we can send somebody to the moon. Raise a child, that's complex. I mean, I've got a 17-year-old who doesn't listen to me. Well, he doesn't need to because I didn't listen to my parents as well. So it's a complex thing. But when you look at a Stacey matrix, where you look at the agreement between people and certainty of people, you get the zone of complexity. That's where your frailty lies. There's lots of innovation, lots of creativity, lots of debate, serendipity, trial and error. So if you look at the services around the country, that's because it's a complex situation. And people are doing different things because they're trying to get the best for the patient, but might not, the agreeability and certainty is low. That means people need to be aware of what's good for that place might not be good for another place. So trying to implement something from another place needs to be considered because they're in the zone of complexity there. We do this a lot. The patient's just staring at you, looking at, he just wants an answer of what to do. If you got to break it down into simple brass tacks, which is A&E, the patient can go on with or without support. You can admit them for a short period of time, send them on with or without support, or some of them will need a little bit longer and then long-term care. When you look at and talk to patients, this is how they feel. Sorry, I didn't put the doctors in because this was not my cartoon. So we repeat ourselves quite a bit. Then when you look at some of the places we looked at, as we looked at audits of when we were junior doctors and then registrars, we do a lot of them. One of the places we did was there were nearly 12 medical histories taken from different staff, and all of them had something less than the very first one, which is the paramedics note and the ambulance handover sheet. They did not, nobody looked at that. Most of the history was there, and it keeps propagating. Again, we have a lot of solutions and this is how it looks, but remember the user. That's how it looks for them. They don't have a clue what's going on. So all they want is to keep things simple. So for us, keeping it simple means like what the patient wants to. Does the patient really need to stay there or need to go to an assessment unit or discharge from there, or do we need to have care in the community? These can be done by simplification, asking yourself a few questions. Do they need support or no support? Keeping it simple, again, helps your brain. The Stacey matrix says it all for you. The zone of complexity is chaos over there, but keeping it simple for yourself, that means you can explain yourself to your colleagues and explain yourself to family. And again, what are we looking for in failed patient? I just told you that the very first couple of slides is they're already slow, they get tired, they get exhausted, and they don't participate and they don't eat. We got malnutrition, again, keep them in the hospital, malnutrition risk is high. Again, increased risk of falls, you're deconditioning them. The questions are simple. Again, is the ADL, activity of daily living, baseline stable? Nearly 90% of them are stable. We look at the clinical frailty scale and looking at 2 weeks before how they are. And fracture neck or femur, of course, they're going to be bed bound, but that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for 2 weeks how they are. Can that be recovered easily at home? Most places have some kind of remedial services, but the volume of admissions and then when they go to the ward, it's kind of hard to keep up with that. I mean, not only we admit them, we decondition them because of the activity levels being nearly 97% of the time they don't do much. So they nearly 70% or 72% locally have got carers or people living with them. So is there enough sufficient willingness? If they're not, then we look at, again, pathway one kind of situation. Meals and prep and medication can be supervised. Yes, we do have assisted technology locally, which we ask for help for, even with dementia patients. So there are lots of solutions available. And is the home environment safe? When you look at them or talk to them, it's usually unsafe when they're in the hospital. But when you ask them the questions based on how they're coping and what they're doing before, it kind of starts making it easier for ourselves. Again, the bit which we get stumped with pathway one is that nearly every one of them, you feel like they need some kind of monitoring, but the monitoring should be mainly to decrease their risk. Again, promoting recovery at home. That means, you know, that they say the virtual wards, especially in the respiratory and also acute medicine, seem to work. Our virtual ward, every time we ask for telemonitoring to be put in, nearly we've got a 50% no ratio. That means especially patients living alone, they don't want to do it themselves. They would rather have somebody come in. And the patients who have family members, so we're getting a 50-50 hit rate of patients accepting telemonitoring at home, so that after 2 days we can continue monitoring them to see if they're deteriorating. So hopefully other places have got it right. We're working on that locally over here. The bit which we get really concerned about is the investigations. We always get discharge letters which say, oh, CRP decreasing, can you repeat the CRP or use an EASE in a week? If the patient's eating, talking, going to co-op, shopping, I don't know why we're doing the blood investigation unless you tell me that I'm missing something big. If the hemoglobin's dropping, then they needed to be investigated and then sent out, rather than us monitoring the hemoglobin dropping down to 6 and then sending them back in for transfusion. Again, it's mainly to decrease readmissions and to promote independence. When you look at even John Bolton's and other studies, when the help put in at home, it is decreased by nearly 30% the minute they hit home. So they are better off at home. Again, last bit is we do need to consider palliative care in advanced dementias. We do see a lot of patients where patients has been bedbound for 4 to 5 months. They're not communicating for more than a few months now. And then the advanced care plan also says a few things, but nobody's followed it through. They had poor oral intake, so you do need to have that conversation as well. Heart failure, we're seeing more of it now. We've got heart failure pathways, which is still, we're begging and asking them to get them to our palliative care teams and clinics so that we can actually monitor them at home. And if you want to increase their diuresis, we can get them into hospice, or we can start giving furosemide at home. DNR being in place, advanced care planning. The frailty element, please do not discount it, because on a daily basis, out of 10 patients got a high new score, 3 with no palliative or advanced measures, 2 of them refused to go in. Philippa, apology for taking up a few minutes of your time, so I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Bharath. That was a really insightful and comprehensive presentation. That's about the impact of hospitalisation of people living with frailty, but also a really positive message. So thank you so much. Yeah, conscious of time, we are running over slightly, so I think we'll take questions for Bharath at the end of the session. We'll move on to the next presentation now. So for the next session, I'd like to introduce Philippa Godsalve, who's a service manager in care of the elderly, medicine and urgent care for North Middlesex University Hospital. So Philippa and her colleagues are going to talk about some of the work they'll be doing in the reconditioning space and raising awareness about frailty. So over to you, Philippa.
Thank you so much for having me, and thanks very much to Lakkappa there for a brilliant, insightful presentation. I learnt loads, and I'm going to take away that Stacey matrix. I really enjoyed that. I often reflect on how much complexity there is when we're dealing with frailty. So thank you so much. I'm here with Liz Francis, our CPG program manager, and we've also got a couple of North Mid colleagues on the call, including Sweta, who's going to be presenting with us. So I will share my slides now.
Hi everyone. I don't know if everyone can hear me. Is
Yes.
yeah, perfect.
Yeah,
my name is Sweta. I'm an occupational therapist, band 5, on care of the elderly right now. I'll be rotating next month onto stroke. So my team lead has introduced me to a new device that we call the Omni projector, which is sort of a new technology that's been brought in and stimulate our patients whilst they're on the ward. So the idea of the the idea of the projector is to create movement using surfaces. So that's things like the table, or in some cases the floor. So we've got a floor mat that we can use. Currently we're only using it with patients that have some sort of cognitive impairment. So that could be dementia or delirium, or in some cases stroke. We haven't really been able to introduce it to the stroke team yet, but I'm hoping to do that in my next rotation. So what this Omni projector really does is it helps us build a rapport with them, because they're not really stimulated in the hospital, on the wards, especially on care of the elderly, where everyone's sort of presented in a specific manner. It's very dull in terms of being in a hospital. So using the projector, we kind of get some sort of engagement with them. We get them talking about their own experiences. We have over 100 games on there. So it has a variety from memory quizzes to upper limb rehab to lower limb rehab. You've got games that include you smashing coconuts and you can control the speed. It's got music in it, so you can make music. It's sort of really a fun group collaboration that the patients do together. So it's one of our group therapy tasks that we do as part of the therapy team, that's including physiotherapy. In terms of the projector itself, the Omni, as far as I know, is about building a meaningful session within the therapy team. So that's why we've had time on care of the elderly to run it over. And in terms of the feedback that we've got, most of our patients want to do it again. So depending on our capacity of staff, we decide if we can have it at least weekly, if not then every monthly, on the care of the elderly wards, which are about 4 wards. We've used it with our staff. We've used it with our junior staff on the ward. We've done it within our therapy team, just to sort of, you know, support us with our well-being in terms of stress. It's a really good stress equipment that we use. And for the future, we have sort of the software, which you can adapt the games to patient specific, so it can be a bit more person centered, which is quite exciting for us to do, but we need a bit more time with that. So yeah, that's all from me.
Thank you so much. I think that's such an important point you made as well about the inpatient activities having a positive impact on staff and wellbeing as well as our patients. And here's just a few more of the kind of inpatient activities that we do. So with our therapy teams and our dementia leads, so music therapy, we've got aqua paints activities, games, puzzles. We've had some volunteer sessions making pom-poms with patients, exercise videos, and of course the Omni projector games, which is enjoyed by patients and staff. Thank you so much, Sweta. So just as brilliantly explained before, our patients with frailty are vulnerable to deconditioning, inpatient harms, increased length of stays, and not going home to their usual place of residence. So we're going to talk a little bit about our Keep Me Mobile campaign. So I will let Liz introduce it, and then we'll share a quick video with you.
Hi everybody. Next slide, please. So I'm really pleased to see Rosie on the call as well, because Rosie and I did a lot of work on deconditioning at Royal Free Hospital. But this really kicked off for me when I worked at Barnet Hospital. They had an amazing Keep Me Mobile campaign there, and I was very involved in it. And I was really keen when I moved over to the North Middlesex to bring it with me, because it's simple, it's the right thing to do for patients, and it's you know, really resonates, I think, with anyone that works in frailty. So I took a team over in March 2019, pre-COVID, and they gave us the real inspiration that we could do this at the North Middlesex. We were then lucky enough to become part of the NHS Frailty Collaborative 90-Day Challenge from May to September 2019. and we needed to present a QI project. So we thought this was the perfect opportunity to introduce Keep Me Mobile here. We used 2 different wards. We had same aim, same methodology, and one was our acute medical ward and one was one of the care of the elderly wards. We don't have a particularly well embedded QI methodology here, so it was a really great opportunity for the teams to learn QI and apply it very practically, also really benefiting patients. We show the video now. We made a video for the collaborative because we thought it would be more fun to watch it rather than listening to us. So we'll share it with you now. It's quite old, it's pre-COVID, but we'll show you.
Apologies while I just faff very quickly. Just looking for the button that says to share my audio.
So if you press on your share screen button.
Oh yeah, so I'll
and
stop.
then if you press that, then you should be given the on the top right.
Got it.
Got it?
Great, okay. Thank you so much. Right, so back to our slides. Can everybody see those okay?
Yeah, we can.
So I think we will still have more people coming in, but I just thought before I hand over to Martin, I'd do a quick hello and introduction. So for those of you who haven't come across me before,
sorry, apologies. That was very confusing. Okay, so back to our slides. So
I mean, I think that I think the video kind of covered everything. Here's just a very quick, we collected data. We are, I think COVID really affected obviously our campaign, and everything went on hold for a little bit. But part of our Frailty Awareness Month, which we're going to talk to a little bit more in a minute, really helped us to reinvigorate our campaign. The wards were really up for it. They understood the methodology, they understood how to do it, so we could actually pick it up really, really quickly. So we have now spread Keep Me Mobile from those 2 original wards to 6. And as you can see, that the data is pretty impressive, that most eligible patients are getting up every day and enjoying the Omni projector and other activities that we're doing to make patients' stays in hospital more enjoyable. Another word is that one of the housekeepers who helped us in our campaign, Chanel, who was in a lot of the photographs, is now trained to be a nurse, which is really lovely. So that's it from us. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will just talk through the final few slides around what we've done around Frailty Awareness Month. And much of this was sort of reinvigorating the work that we were already doing and really shouting about it, getting it on the comms, and celebrating the sort of inpatient activities that we've been doing, and kind of ramping up all of those things. So we had a big comms campaign. We had frailty awareness sessions. We had a frailty bus, which you'll see a picture of in a minute. And this went round to many of the inpatient wards delivering frailty awareness sessions and Keep Me Mobile content. We relaunched the campaign as part of Frailty Awareness Month and provided information to all of our inpatient wards. So the aim is to spread this trust-wide. We had some events, inpatient activities, fundraising, and we had a lot of fun. So here are some of the highlights. So we kicked off the month on the 1st of November doing a grand round on frailty awareness. We had a feature on what we're doing with inpatient activities and Keep Me Mobile in our True North magazine. We had a therapy dog going around the wards. We had a magician. We had a brilliant staff blog feature with Riti Jury, our frailty lead nurse. We had some musical performances by the Chicken Shed local organisation. They were absolutely fantastic. And you can see there the patients enjoying that on our wards. We had Age UK exercise taster sessions. We reopened our Medical Day Hospital with Ledley King, local Spurs legend. We had Bambos Taralambos come to see our Amber unit, and you can see the frailty bus there. And we were on our trust team brief a number of times as well. So it was a massive effort, massive campaign to kind of spread the word about frailty and keeping people moving in hospital. Here's just some more lovely pictures of Riti and Debbie, our Falls lead, doing the sessions on the wards. And a few things that we achieved during the month. So we visited 8 wards with our frailty bus. We reached 72 people with our sessions with the bus, and many more people joined the e-learning online for frailty and falls awareness. We raised £200 for our charity. We relaunched Keep Me Mobile on 5 wards, actually. Amber was included in that as well. We had 1,701 instances of patients sitting out before lunchtime, which is really fantastic. We also heard earlier about the importance of identifying frailty in ED. We had 70% of people assessed during that month, and we had countless comms features. I think it was over 10, and lots of engagement on Twitter as well. So just really briefly, what we sort of reflected afterwards was it was just such a massive MDT effort. We forged really good relationships with our comms team, which has been ongoing. We had fantastic exec support and engagement, which has meant that You know, frailty is high on the agenda when it comes to, you know, asking for additional resources, which has been great. We've had really good engagement from community and voluntary teams, and actually they're all raring to provide that support. And sometimes if you don't ask, you don't get. So that was brilliant. Wards really enjoyed a bit of competition within the sort of Keep Me Mobile, and we had some prizes as well. So that went down really well. We are trying to keep up the momentum with Keep Me Mobile, and actually we found that most of the wards are still carrying on with the recording, which is brilliant. So massive well done to them. We want to look at some more digital solutions now that many of the wards have moved over from using the boards that you saw in the video to digital boards, how we can embed Keep Me Mobile as part of that. It's been a massive challenge with staffing, particularly over winter with capacity to do the training. Staffing on the wards just daily has been a big challenge, and releasing people to attend training. And none of it would have been possible without project support. So it was a lot of work. So advice to anyone doing it would be just keep it really simple. And just too many people to thank individually, but this just gives you an idea of everyone who contributed to this and who contributes daily to keeping people moving on the wards and promoting reconditioning. So huge thank you to everybody. And that's it from us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Philippa and team. That was really incredible. I wish we had longer really to talk about it, because there's so many really exciting things you're doing, and food for thought for everyone, really tangible stuff, really tangible difference you make to patients and staff. So thank you so much. Unfortunately, we've only got 3 minutes left of the session. So what we're going to do, we'll do 2 questions from the chat, I think, and we don't have any hands up at the moment, and all the other questions that we don't manage to answer, we'll capture those and we'll feed back to you after the session. So Nick, could you sort of 2 questions from the chat? Would be great.
Yeah, so there's only really a couple. I'm going to ask Bharath to look at Jackie Holmes's question. I'll draw that out and put that in an email for you. Jackie's had to drop off, unfortunately, but there's a couple of questions there that directly to you. There's a question from Sarah Shepherd. Do you want to pop in and just ask that question yourself? It's around Omni and care homes. Hi, Sarah.
Hi there. Yeah, it was just a question with regards to the work that you're doing. It sounds absolutely fantastic, and there's always that like sort of the pajama paralysis, isn't there? And it seems that you're really working hard to prevent that, and the results you're getting are great. It was just really to say that I know you said that your video was pre-COVID, but do you encourage patients as well to be getting dressed into their own clothes? Do you find that if they are dressed in their own clothes that helps with mood and with motivation, or does it not make any difference if they're in hospital with regards to what clothes they're wearing? It's just more that they're mobile.
I might come in here. Sorry, let me see if my camera's working. Oops.
Thanks, Mary.
And you said, oh, sorry. Now, it's either ceiling or floor. Oh, yeah. So we have tried. Obviously, there are some people that do want to get dressed and feel happy in their own clothes, and we do promote that. But we do have a lot of patients with advanced dementia and delirium, and a lot of wanderers who try to leave the ward. So sometimes, if we feel it'd be too risky, because you have to swipe to get in and out of the wards, but people dressed in their own clothes and they've got their coat on and someone's coming in, they tend to let them out, and that's very risky. So anyone that wants to wear their own clothes, obviously we'll always promote for them to do that, but we always, if they're too confused and too high risk, then we will keep them in their pajamas. But obviously the important part would be to keep them mobile, so and get them out of bed and get them mobilizing as early as possible.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Mary. Thanks, Sarah. That's it. Lucy, I'm going to hand back to you to wrap us up.
Well, excellent. Thank you so much. I think that's been a really great session. Thanks everyone for attending. Thanks to Bharath, Philippa and team for joining us today. So we'll share the slides and recording after this session, and like I said, any unanswered questions we will follow up with. So that is a wrap. Just please join us for the next session on the 22nd of February. Details can be found on our futures page, and there is a flyer that will circulate after session with a lineup of speakers. Thank you very much.
Thank you.